Sometimes we get things wrong. It happens to us all. You do something with the best of intentions, but instead it turns into a mess. When that happens, fess up, admit your mistake, and move on in a different direction. Easy, right? But apparently not so for our politicians. This week was the turn of Angela Merkel, who, having suffered her second election defeat in as many weeks, has finally managed to express some regret in her handling of the migrant crisis. Despite 82% of Germans being unhappy with the refugee policy, she stopped short of changing it, expressing just that in the words of Cher, she wishes she could turn back time and become better prepared. Frau Merkel, admit it, what you did was ill thought out, dangerous, completely disregarded the rules and created deep-rooted cracks within the EU that will take a very, very long time to heal, if at all. Thanks for the round of applause, by the way.
It's all right, well, it's softly done, but well done, every word.
Sorry.
I don't think you're right. One, she didn't apologise. What she said was, I wish back in 2015 we had been better prepared.
Yeah, no, she didn't apologise. That's my point. She should.
Well, she halfway acknowledged that the country was not ready to take in 1 million refugees. But think of the enormous favour she did us, for example, by soaking up 1 million refugees and allowing us to say we're only going to take 20,000 over the next 5 years. Had she not taken this brave, principled and humane stance, the rest of Europe would be in a much worse crisis on migration than it is now.
I half agree with you, Rachel. I don't think it's about the rest of Europe, but I have the utmost respect for her. I think what she did from a humanitarian perspective, not as a politician, but at the end of the day, these people didn't create the mess. Those 1 million refugees were forced into a situation that was not their doing. You know, the country is war-torn, it's destroyed.
Refugees, James,
you know, but what I'm saying, I get that, but that's a minority. But the majority of these people, and she stood up against everybody else and said, you know what, we'll stand by you. Nobody else did that. Now, so I'm not going to question whether she should apologise or not, but she absolutely has my utmost respect. And I think what she did in the world we live in today makes her an example.
But it went wrong, though, didn't it?
It did go wrong, but actually, if other people had taken that lead, if there'd been a more joined-up way of dealing with the crisis, rather than her dealing with it sort of single-handedly, trying to deal with it single-handedly, I think we would have been in a better position in terms of a more unified approach to the refugee crisis. I think you have to be very careful by separating out economic migrants, people that are using that as an opportunity to leave their situations for economic reasons, and refugees that are fleeing conflict. Now, I think it is absolutely right that we, whether it's Europe, whether it's North Africa, countries, safe havens, absolutely take responsibility for people that are in desperate need. If you're prepared to flee a country, to take your life at risk in terms of getting on a boat and trying to cross the Mediterranean, there's a reason for that if it's genuine. So what we have to do is have a
benefit system.
No, but what we have to do is, with those genuine refugees, have a proper process that means that going forward, because this is going to continue, going forward, we don't end up in a situation where somebody's done something hoping to do it in the right way, but actually it backfiring and her losing popularity because they were so ill-prepared for the amount of people that were coming into Germany.
Graham and Nimby, would you allow that the number one role of a Prime Minister, or in this case a Chancellor, is the protection of your own citizens? Would you agree that that is the number one role of a leader of a country?
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
Bringing in 1 million people, in many instances completely unchecked. And here's a fascinating thing. 70%, roughly 70%, are young males. If you were coming from Syria, or wherever it might be, and you were leaving your wife or your mum or your sisters or grandmas at risk of being raped, wouldn't you want to stay and fight for them?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I would. But 70% of them are come over here, right? There are many people in Germany in desperate need. Germany, actually, although they're a very wealthy country...
in desperate need?
Yes, Germans, native Germans. Would you look after next door's children before you looked after your own? No, you wouldn't. There are plenty of people in Germany who need help.
Yeah, but there are plenty of people who can look after next door's children as well, Nick.
Michelle is absolutely right. This was ill thought through. I believe the migrant crisis is probably the biggest crisis facing Europe since World War II. I really do. I think we've only just seen the start of it. And where David Cameron was right, and I think Mrs May is possibly right, the solution is to deal with it at source, to work closer, to try and help us. We're going to be sending troops into Eritrea and into Somalia as advisors. Please God, they are advisors. They're not like Vietnam's advisors.
Yeah, we're bombing Syria.
That's a whole separate...
But Nick, what you're doing is
we can't,
We're taking 20,000.
Nick, but what you're doing
20,000 is chicken feed.
How many are you having?
You know
how
that.
many, in your number of homes, how many are you having?
I would take one, maybe.
You will take one.
Well, my husband actually talks about it bizarrely, but I don't want to be held to it. Come on, Nick, you know that.
What you've managed to do what you've managed to do between the two of you is totally dehumanise people that are in desperate situations.
No,
you have, because you're talking about you're saying 70% are migrants, so let's forget the 30%. Let's forget the 30% that are genuine refugees, because, you know, they
should be helped at source.
Yeah, but that's not, I'm not arguing against that particularly. What I said earlier was that we have to have a unified approach to it, but at the same time we have to accept that there's a proportion of them, no matter how many, that are in desperate need of our support. So we have an opportunity, not just as a country, but as Europe and broader than Europe, to do something about it.
But it wasn't unified there, and this is my problem. What she did, she almost appointed herself as some self-appointed president of Europe. She basically stood on the thing, made this announcement. Even she admits that the slogan she was using was empty. But she made this big announcement, come everybody, and then she just expected everybody else within the EU to take their fair share, to do their stuff, because she dictated that was the way. And if you ask me, I actually think that what her policy went somewhere towards the outcome of the Brexit debate. I think lots of people looked at what she did.
And it certainly has affected her ratings, hasn't it? But that doesn't mean what she was doing wasn't based on the right principles. I think we have to take responsibility for some of those people that are sort of victims because of some of the action we've taken in
how many are you going to take?
It's not a case of how many I'm going to take.
But it's not an individual. It's all right for all you people. And well done. You all live in fantastic homes in rich parts of the country. You are not on the pressure points. Your kids possibly aren't struggling to get into the schools of your choice. You probably all have private health care. You don't have to sit at A&E waiting as after United Nations come through to get treatment. Okay. That is the reality of it.
Is throwing up walls and barbed wire fences really the answer to the fact that 65 million people are displaced around the world? Graham is right. We need to have a unified, not even European-wide, we need a global solution. We need a global programme. We need a global protocol on this, which means that, you know, Theresa May's in the UN now saying that refugees or asylum seekers have to stick in the first country they come to.
Trying to get a global solution on this. Donald Trump Jr. He's one of the reasons why we'll never get a global solution if he gets to continue saying what he said. I mean, this is utterly scandalous from my point of view. If I had a bowl of Skittles and I told you just 3 would kill you, would you take a handful? That's our Syrian refugee problem. That is absolutely disgraceful. But the fact is, within the population of migrants that are fleeing for whatever reasons, there is a group of people there that desperately need our help. What we have to do is find a way of processing people properly so that the genuine asylum seekers need or get our protection, even if it's for a short period of time. Wherever that is, I don't care, quite frankly. Yeah. But we have to step up and deal with that part of the problem.
But I remind you how Michelle started this, which was Angela Merkel got it wrong and should apologise. That was we've gone a little bit off track.
What, that she got it wrong? Well,
and
I mean,
apologise.
It's proven that she's got it wrong. She's admitted without apologising. She's admitted she got it wrong. And she's of course she should apologise. Absolutely, if that's what it takes to.
The biggest rise in far-right voting in Germany since the 30s and 40s. Now, what does that tell you? We know what happened then.
Yeah,
and that's courtesy of Angela Merkel's ridiculous policy that Michelle has highlighted.
It's not, Nick, because the far-right is rising everywhere. In countries that haven't taken huge amounts of of migrants in as
What do you
well.
think lies behind that?
Well, there's plenty of things that lie behind it.
Like
but
migrant crisis,
It's people like you
inability to get
saying we
jobs.
should look after our own before we look
Is that a
after other
crime?
people's
Is that a
children.
crime?
Do you not agree with that
No,
statement?
it just
though?
fans this sense that there are them and us.
So you
But
would
do you
feed
not agree
next
with
door's
that
children
statement?
before you'd feed yours?
Oh, Nick, don't make it
I'm
about
sorry.
what I
I'd make
would
enough.
do.
I'd make enough for both families, to be honest.
And by the way,
There's
what,
only so much in it.
what everyone needs to be thinking about, by the way, anyway, is about refugee and migrants is one side of the things. Until you actually stop this conflict at its source, and I don't even think enough stuff is being focused on how you're actually going to stop this, because until you actually properly stop this, people are always going to want to leave anyway. But I end as I started. She owes us an apology. And I think I've got you to agree with me. Can I get you to agree with me in my last 10 seconds?
I do agree with you, Michelle.
Good.
I think she should
Thank you. My
apologise.
work here is
I don't.
done.
And
I'm going
who eats
home.
Skittles out of bowls anyway. Don't you nice packet?
OK.